Well, we were talking the other day about the impact of social media to organizations, and I know that you have a lot of experience and background around the CEO perspective. So I think it was a good opportunity for us to expand that discussion. And I'd love to hear from you how you see, expanding on our previous discussion, how you see social media in the eyes of the CEO.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting topic, Andrew, and it's one that can be both really invigorating and really frustrating, right? Because the CEOs are all over the map. There are some, and you've seen the studies, 22% are sort of right into social media, and they're blogging, and they've got Twitter accounts and that kind of thing, right through to the other side, which is CEOs who just think it's a complete waste of time, know nothing about it. What they think about social media is Twitter. They think Twitter is stupid, so they're not there. So it really is a whole range. They couldn't define social media beyond something like Twitter. So it's interesting, right? It's in terms of how to get there. That we in Boardroom Metrics, we're really committed to social media. So it's always interesting talking to people who are very clear that it won't work for them, particularly business to business CEOs. They seem to be the ones who are the most reticent to see the possibilities of social media. I was with actually someone on the weekend, who's in a large accounting firm, and from their perspective, other than recruiting, social media does not apply to their business. And it led to a very interesting conversation about, really? You really think it doesn't apply to your business? It was a good conversation.
So, is the challenge, the obstacle you're seeing, is it understanding, or is it a lack of commitment?
I think it's great question. I think largely it's lack of understanding, right? To learn social media and understand it fully actually takes some time. On a personal basis, to get to try some things, to try Twitter, to try even something as simple as LinkedIn. The number of people who still don't fully get how LinkedIn can be used and the importance in terms of personal brand building is huge. I was at a seminar the other day where out of 14 people, 13 people were writing their LinkedIn profiles. That was a surprise to me, but I guess that's kind of the state of where it's at. So yeah, lack of knowledge and understanding, and that's sometimes just pure reality. The time required to get to understand social media really is a time commitment that a lot of people, especially the senior levels, just don't have. They just don't have the time to experience it. So yeah, no, I think it's largely understanding. I think there's a lot of myths around it. I think there's a lot of, everybody hears the question, what's the ROI from social media? And I think people who understand social media and I think they have difficulty answering that question in terms of what's the ROI, and it's probably the wrong way even to be thinking about it, but that's just a great game stopper when you start saying what's the ROI on social media. Now, in our case, and in lots of other cases, we can show you how social media has led to sales, it's led to business, it's led to leads, it's led to contacts, it's helped us develop our network, it's done all sorts of great things, but it's almost like that gets viewed as an anomaly, as opposed to that, that would never work in our business, is the perspective that a lot of CEOs take.
It's from my experience, I think the challenge is people try to compare it as a tool where really it's more around relationships, right? So how do you develop ROI from meeting with a potential client as opposed to signing on the dotted line? So, what would happen if they don't participate, if they don't do it?
Yeah, I guess, so, it depends how you think about it, right? We actually tend to think of it as a tool, and therefore, even your question, what happens if you don't participate, really needs to be measured in that context. It's kind of like, if you think of it, social media as being a tool, in fact, it's a series of tools, the decision to participate is really a strategic one. You may have other ways of accomplishing what social media can do for you. If you're already reaching out somehow and talking to customers and getting great customer feedback, let's think from a marketing perspective, or if your customer support department already has a great model in place, you may not need social media. So the decision to get into social media really is strategic in terms of how can this benefit and how can this help. Certainly, to your point, a key element of this is reaching out and having engagement with customers. But hey, there's other ways of doing that, right? There's sales organizations, there's customer support organizations, there's marketing organizations, there's focus groups. There's other tools, there's other methods for doing this. So it is a case of understanding where social media fits as a tool and the benefit in terms of doing it versus those other processes and tools that a CEO or a marketing group or a customer support group might have access to.
So, if you're talking about a marketing group or a CEO in an organization, you commented on it being a lack of understanding in a lot of the cases. So what's their foundation? Where do they start out?
Yeah, interesting. We do obviously a lot of work with clients, and it frequently leads to work with their marketing groups and onto social media. The first place where people need to start, and you would think in 2011 you wouldn't have to say this, but it starts with people's websites. It starts with organizations' websites. It's still kind of shocking how the majority of corporate websites are still kind of brochureware, and they really don't do a great job of both telling the story of what the company does, interacting with customers, or in fact being optimized in an interesting way to show up in searches that potential customers are doing on Google or whatever. So and lots of organizations tend to want to separate their website from other social media tools like Twitter and Facebook and things like that. But our recommendation is always start with your website. Now, the other great thing that's gone on as technology has advanced is all of these tools, Twitter, Facebook, blogging, whatever, can all be incorporated in the company website. So, those considerations also need to be made, but that's really not what I'm saying here. I'm saying, number one, you want to be in the social media, make your website so it's easy to use, so the customers appreciate it, so they can give you feedback on it, and so they can find it. So start there. Beyond that, I mean, the easy place to start with social media, and many companies are doing it, and it's interesting, don't even think of it as social media, is YouTube. Lots of companies who would sort of think that they're not that far into social media, in fact, have their products and the product benefits and people using their products already up on YouTube. And if anybody's been to YouTube lately, YouTube looks a lot like Facebook, right? It's got, you can like, dislike, you can subscribe, you can become a friend, you can add comments, you can add tags, you can do whatever. It is a terrific way and a very simple way, and it makes sense to people because the notion of taking a video of their product or service or a speech they've given or whatever and putting it up there is actually a relatively simple thing to do. So I would say that YouTube is probably a great place to start in terms of, and in fact many organizations are already there in terms of YouTube. I think from there, our experience, we originally started off doing a lot of blogging. Blogging is great. It creates great content. It gets a lot of interest. It's keyword rich. So again, it really, really helps with search. And, anything that helps with search is good for a company. If you're out there producing great content that is meeting the needs of people who are searching, you're going to have people coming to your website. You're going to have people coming and seeing your information. So blogging is great for that. The problem with blogging is it takes work. Right? It really takes a commitment to sit and write something on every 2 days or 3 days. So that's difficult for people, and we've come to understand that. We put a commitment into it, but hey, go and look at our blog. You're going to see some big gaps where, hey, we just didn't get around to it for any given week. So that's probably an issue with blogging. The one we've really seen come on, and it's big time now, is Twitter. Twitter is huge. The ability to target content, target followers, be incredibly helpful and relevant with respect to the industry you're in, the business you're in, your customers, that kind of thing. Twitter is a skill. We've had a chance to observe that in terms of how to tweet and how to get the right content. But the ability to rapidly reach large like-minded followers, I think there's nothing better than Twitter, and we've really come to appreciate that over the past couple of months. So I think that combination, start with your website. You're probably already on YouTube, some blogging, and then really getting engaged with Twitter. Probably a great place to start.
There's a lot of discussion, I know, in a lot of companies around measuring ROI, and every initiative and every project seems to come up in discussion. I think that if you're looking at, for example, customer satisfaction, there's a lot of discussion and there's a lot of writing you can go out and read around how do I apply this and how does it apply to my return on investment. How would you see measurements as being incorporated within social media for organization?
Yeah, I think measurements evolve, Andrew. I do. I think up front, a CEO thinking about social media has to be very clear, first and foremost, why they're getting into social media. So what is the purpose of it? Don't do social media for the sake of social media. Do social media because it is a strategy or a tactic to improve, could be customer satisfaction, it could be sales leads, it could be whatever. But I think starting off, the initial measures are in fact very tactical. This is where you actually worry about, is there just activity? Is there somebody in the organization who actually has a plan and some wherewithal to make this happen? Have we assigned roles correctly so that it can actually be executed? So many organizations, and people out there will relate to this, think of the number of company newsletters that wanted to be started or got started and one issue went out out and then it stopped. This requires a commitment to make it work. So if I'm a CEO, I would be measuring what kind of commitment have we made up front to ensure it is going to get going. Do we have a role defined, for example, for the person who is going to be, in charge of our YouTube account or our Facebook account? Where do they fit within the marketing department? Then look at, are we posting regularly? Are we tweeting regularly? Are we doing that? So this is very low level stuff. From there, though, then you start to get more strategic in terms of, as a result of that, what kind of feedback are we getting from customers? Are we getting regular interaction? Are we getting back to customers who get in touch with us? Are we facilitating that thing that social media is supposed to be all about, which is, in fact, interaction with customers? Finally, as it starts to move on and really take hold, that's when you can start to measure it at the highest levels. You can start to look at sales and performance and other elements that really you had put this, go back to your original objective for putting social media in place. At the CEO level, you start to measure it at the highest levels of return. But it has to get going first. And none of this stuff takes off overnight. So the initial measurements are going to be at the lowest levels. Down the road, you're going to be able to look at things like ROI. You're going to be able to look at customer interaction, at feedback, at how we solved a problem and what the impact of that has been on the organization. So I think that evolves over time.
So if I'm a CEO, how should I be looking at social media? Like, really, how should I start this out?
Yeah. Andrew, my sense, and I'm really open to your thoughts on this, we view social media as a tool, right? This is not social media for the sake of social media. Social media is a tool. It's like you should be considering it the same way you're considering what kind of software for your accounting department or your support department or your engineering guys want a bunch of new equipment. It should be thought of in that context. What is it we're trying to achieve, and where can social media fit? I think the challenge, the same way as it would be for me trying to understand accounting software, is to be well informed with respect to how social media can meet that objective and where it does fit. But I think, people panicking about being into social media, that's the wrong way to think about it. Social media is a tool, and it helps various functions in the organization, whether it's the customer group or the marketing group or the sales group. It helps these functions in the organization do their jobs better. And it needs to be thought of that way, it needs to be implemented that way, and it needs to be measured that way in the organization.
I agree. I think you hit, for me, the key point there was around determining an objective first. And just like any other initiative, like accounting software or any kind of marketing initiative, that's the piece I think that maybe we tend to forget with social media as we fall on the bandwagon.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was at a roundtable discussion the other day, and I got quite frustrated. These are, these are thoughtful people thinking hard about it, but the conversation on social media was all about the conversation and about all sort of the cool stuff. And I really think that's kind of missing the point. I mean, yes, that's the kind of thing that social media makes possible. But again, why do you want to have those conversations? Okay, I guess, Andrew, just a thought in terms of social media being a tool. Many of you may be aware, I'm certainly aware of a mobile startup that handled all of their recruiting of people, training of people, training of customers, user documents and everything else was all handled by social media, right? So if you ask them where social media fit, clearly this is where social media is not being used just for the sake of social media. Social media was the vehicle, the strategy, and the tactics for making their new organization come up to speed and to run very successfully. These people actually got delayed in terms of their launch. They were able to communicate to their customer base and to their employee base about what was happening, and they did it all with social media. I don't look, that's a cool story, but the coolness is not the point. The point is, as a strategy for executing their business plan, it was very, very successful, well thought through and executed perfectly. So I think, it goes back to that. I just want to reinforce that this social media for the sake of social media, that notion of jumping on the bandwagon, don't do it. Where does it fit? It is a tool. It helps facilitate almost every function in the organization if used properly. I think that's how to think about social media.
I agree. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.